And that is the area where I think that the GCC and ASEAN will find as a fertile ground for future investment, and also for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the Republic of the Philippines to further strengthen the ties, not only in trade, but in areas of telecommunication, healthcare, energy, and even agriculture, as what's been spoken about.
This isn't just a compliment. It's a seismic shift that caught the Philippines off guard. And it says everything about the quiet power Filipinos hold inside one of the most secretive kingdoms on earth. For decades, Filipinos have been the invisible force behind Saudi Arabia's wealthiest families and elite institutions. Their work ethic, loyalty, and emotional intelligence earned respect. But no one expected a statement like this from the House of Saud. So, what did they say? In short, Saudi royals declared that when it comes to unwavering trust, life and death trust, they turn to Filipinos. Not princes, not billionaire businessmen, not longtime confidants, Filipinos. It sounds almost unreal, but look closer, and it makes perfect sense. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, with its unimaginable riches and traditions, has quietly been built and protected by people from halfway across the world. Filipinos who brought more than just skills. They brought something priceless. It's not just professionalism, not just efficiency. It's something deeper, Malasakit, a uniquely Filipino concept that means going beyond duty. It's about care, compassion, and loyalty that comes from the heart, not the paycheck. And in a country where trust is sacred, Filipinos became more than workers. They became family. There are countless stories of Filipino nurses staying at the bedside of royal patients long after their shifts ended, of nannies who raised Saudi princes with the care of a second mother, of house staff who were entrusted with every intimate detail and never once broke that trust. That kind of integrity? It's rare. And in Saudi culture, it's everything. It's no wonder then that Filipino workers quickly became the gold standard. Families didn't just hire them, they requested them, by name, by region, by word of mouth, because this wasn't about labor, it was about dependability, warmth, and presence. Filipinos have an almost supernatural ability to sense what's needed in a room, when to be silent, when to comfort, when to act. That emotional radar can't be taught. And in a society where privacy and dignity mean everything, that skill becomes invaluable. But there's another reason Filipinos thrived in the kingdom: adaptability. With deep cultural respect and a significant Muslim population at home, many Filipinos already understood Islamic customs before ever landing in Riyadh. They didn't just arrive, they blended in, honoring traditions without erasing themselves. This cultural harmony allowed them to connect in ways most foreigners never could. Saudi royals noticed, and now they're speaking up about it. What started as quiet admiration is now public praise. And for the Philippines, it's more than flattering. It's proof that its people are shaping global relationships in the most human way possible. It's a powerful reminder. You don't need titles, money, or power to make history. Sometimes, all it takes is care, character, and consistency. And Filipinos? They've been delivering that for generations. Suddenly, if you were a Saudi royal searching for someone to entrust with your home, your children, or your most private affairs, there was one obvious choice: a Filipino. And it didn't stop at domestic roles. Filipinos started rising across Saudi society, not just as caregivers or nannies, but as nurses, engineers, pilots, accountants, and personal aides to some of the most powerful individuals in the Middle East. This wasn't luck, it was demand, and that demand came from proven trust. As the relationship deepened, so did the reliance. The Philippines became one of Saudi Arabia's largest sources of foreign labor, and back home, the billions in remittances became lifelines, keeping families afloat, sending kids to school, and building futures one paycheck at a time. But this story goes far beyond economics. This wasn't just about contracts or convenience. It was about respect, genuine, hard-earned respect that transcended wealth, borders, and religion. Because if this were just about wages, the Saudis could have hired from anywhere. There's no shortage of people willing to take on hard work abroad. But what makes Filipinos different? It's not listed on any CV. It's the way they make a foreign place feel like home, for the people they serve. That's a rare gift. And the Saudis saw it, and they valued it. Sure, not every story has been smooth. There were hardships, there were cases of abuse and unfair treatment, real challenges that can't be ignored. But one thing remained unshaken: the trust. Because when it really mattered, when lives, legacies, and the deepest vulnerabilities were on the line, Filipinos were the ones still standing. Not because they were perfect, but because they were consistent, loyal, compassionate, present. And in a world where power shifts like desert winds, one thing remained constant. If you want loyalty, if you want dedication, if you want heart, you call a Filipino. By the late 1970s, this trust had quietly transformed into something bigger. Filipinos weren't just workers. They had become part of the family. They were woven into the very rhythm of daily life, present at birthdays, weddings, and even royal funerals. They weren't just there to serve, they were there to stay. It all spread through word of mouth. One Saudi household would tell another, "Hire a Filipino." They never let you down. And just like that, the demand exploded. By the 1980s, it wasn't a trend, it was tradition. These weren't short-term contracts. Many Filipinos stayed with families for decades. They left their own homes, their own children, and gave the best years of their lives to someone else's. That's not just hard work, that's selfless sacrifice. And there are stories that still echo across the kingdom. One Saudi prince, battling chronic illness, chose to place his life in the hands of one person, a Filipina nurse. Doctors rotated in and out. Specialists flew in from Europe, but she was the one he trusted most. When he traveled abroad for treatment, his only request? "She comes with me." That says everything. Because trust like that can't be bought. It's earned moment by moment, year by year, through care, presence, and a heart that sees people as more than just tasks. These stories aren't rare, they're repeated across households, across generations. A young maid who arrived as a teenager becomes a constant in a royal family's life. She helps raise their children, teaches them, comforts them, and when the daughter she helped raise gets married, her only condition is this: she comes with me, not as help, as family. That's the depth of the bond we're talking about. Because at the end of the day, many people can follow instructions or do a job. But Filipinos bring something you can't teach: the ability to make people feel safe, seen, and loved. You'd think with all this admiration, the path would be easy. But it wasn't. There were struggles, long nights, missed birthdays, broken systems, homesickness that never really faded. Some employers were cruel, some conditions were unbearable. And yet, Filipinos endured. Because when they commit, they don't fold. They fight through the hardship. They adapt. They rise. And that resilience, that unshakable will to keep going even when everything feels against them, that's what earned them not just admiration, but reverence. That's why today you'll find Filipinos everywhere in Saudi Arabia, not just in homes but in hospitals, schools, banks, private jets, and embassies. They're handling affairs most outsiders would never be allowed near, managing accounts, overseeing care for aging royals, supporting missions that require absolute confidentiality. And despite the decades that have passed, that trust has never faded. Even as cultures shift, even as technology changes the way people work, the bond between Filipinos and Saudi families remains unshaken. Why? Because an entire generation of Saudis grew up with Filipinos not just beside them, but raising them. The woman who made their lunch, taught them manners, comforted them in tears, she wasn't an outsider. She was family. That emotional foundation doesn't dissolve with age, it shapes who they become. This is the legacy no one talks about enough. The Filipino contribution to Saudi Arabia isn't just about service, it's about love in action. It's about showing up in quiet, consistent ways that build a level of trust few ever experience. And in a world obsessed with credentials, appearances, and titles, Filipinos prove that the deepest power comes from presence, integrity, and heart. So when the Saudi royals said what they said, it wasn't just praise. It was an acknowledgement of something sacred. That sometimes the people who change your life don't come wearing crowns. They arrive in uniforms, with a smile, and a heart full of Malasakit.